And you were an early supporter of Article 5, Convention of States.
Absolutely.
Where the people of the United States, through their state representatives and state senators, working through that process, can restructure what's become really a bastardized system in many respects, and that is where the federal government, this ubiquitous federal leviathan, is smothering states and localities. And here the framers said, you know, there's two ways to address this. You can have an amendment that comes out of Congress, and George Mason said, well, Congress will never fix itself. Or an amendment that comes out of a meeting, a convention of states, not a constitutional convention, a convention of states, and then same ratification process, 3/4 of the states. I wrote a book about this, talking about term limits for members of Congress. Everyone doesn't have to agree. Term limits for Supreme Court, firm spending limits, borrowing limits, tax limits. This is something you said we ought to look at and we ought to consider, correct?
Right, and I said it as a candidate for president, and the president doesn't have to do anything about it except be supportive of it. You don't have to sign a bill. It's up to the citizens through their legislature, and they're making progress and getting the number of states necessary to call it. People say, well, why do you need it? I'd say three things have changed that the founders could never have anticipated. The first is I don't think they ever thought that people would want to be in Congress for 30 or 40 years. You know, when this process began, you had to beg people to run for office. Coming to Washington was a mission in and of itself, not to mention living in a place where in the summer it was miserable, in the winter it was miserable. So getting people to, our earliest elected leaders in this country were reluctant leaders, not people looking to be in it as a career. The second is they never could have anticipated the direction the judiciary has gone, which is this activist judiciary that has imposed on itself this view that they are super legislators, policymakers. And the third is the regulatory agencies, which in many cases now supersede the Congress in terms of writing law and setting policy. And so the result is a federal government that today would be unrecognizable to our founders. People look at this, if you went back to the founding of the Republic and they saw this federal government, they wouldn't recognize it. This is in fact entirely what they feared. A large central government, a national government, which is never what they intended. And so so how do you fix it? And the answer is the people fix it. Article 5 created a mechanism by which people could take charge of the Republic and course correct using the Constitution as a way to further limit government, given the current realities that we face.
That was a very brave thing for you to do, because a lot of candidates won't talk about that. Governor Abbott supports it strongly. He's working on a book on it. Milton Friedman supported it. Dwight Eisenhower supported it. Everett Dirksen supported it. Most of all, the framers of the Constitution and the ratifiers supported it. And work on our state representatives and state senators to do the right thing, to have a convention of states that will give us our power back, give the states their power back, and in the end, give us our liberty back.